presentation is part of, this paper is part of my PhD research. I'm in my second year now, and focusing on showcase festivals, and Eurosonic is my main case study. So each year in January, the Dutch city of Groningen becomes the epicenter for a 4-day series of events. In its 32-year existence, the Eurosonic Noorderslag Festival has developed into a multifaceted urban showcase festival that serves the local, national and international music industry. Combined with the music industry conference, Eurosonic Noorderslag presents a European-focused event, claiming to provide a counterweight to the dominance of the Anglo-American music industry. Eurosonic Noorderslag is promoted as one festival, but it's actually a combination of 2 events. The first part is Eurosonic, which is the 3-day European-focused showcase component. After these first 3 days, the festival closes on Saturday with the second event, Noorderslag, which focuses exclusively on Dutch bands and is held in an indoor cultural venue in the city of Groningen. Both festival elements coexist along with a cluster of music industry-related sub-events, which all represent and serve a wide variety of music industry stakeholder interests. In the 2018 edition of the festival, over 62 stages presented 352 acts to over 40,000 visitors. The associated industry conference attracted more than 4,000 music industry delegates. In this presentation, I'll first give an impression of the festival's local cultural landscape in order to provide a backdrop of the city-specific elements. I will then focus on how tensions about the representation of local identity has informed its expansion on a European level. And finally, I'll provide 2 perspectives of contextualizing Eurosonic Noorderslag in the face of European identity formation to show how identification on a supranational level, which is one of the key issues in today's political and cultural landscape, is considered by the festival in 2 contrasting ways. I draw from research on festivalization and cultural identity as theorized by first Adam Crims, who makes the case for understanding music as profoundly mediated by its immediate urban environment and, quote, seeing music as a socializing agent with its own complex channeling from and back into the organization of society as a whole, end quote. Secondly, Jonathan Wynn, who reveals the multifaceted nature of urban showcase festivals in his research on South by Southwest, which can be regarded as the American equivalent of Eurosonic Noorderslag. Jonathan Wynn states that these urban events allow for a, quote, greater variety of both unofficial and official participation, with a low density of activity and lots of turbulence, end quote. And finally, Monica Sassatelli, who examines how European cultural identity is negotiated through festivals, within institutions and in discourse surrounding Europe's narrative of belonging, and finding what she refers to as unity in diversity. Eurosonic Noorderslag appeals to the transnational music industry, but is also inseparably linked to the Dutch city of Groningen. Ever since the festival's inception in 1986, the location of events has been the inner city and its venues. And several factors can be attributed to the festival's continued success in Groningen, all related to specific characteristics of the city. First, the city's location is paramount to its reputation. With a population of over 200,000 inhabitants, it's the largest city in the northern part of the Netherlands, but it is surrounded by wide acres of farmland, isolating the city from other larger urban spaces. This physically and culturally isolated location prompts festival visitors to book hotels rather than commuting in for particular days of the festival. For many festival visitors, it has become the annual field trip they look forward to each January when the festival is held. January is a quiet period for the music industry and a time when concert and festival organizers are getting ready to book new acts for the coming festival season. And organizing an event right after the turn of the year festivities proved effective and grew into a situation of what is now referred to as the New Year's reception of the European music industry. Eurosonic Noorderslag takes place in venues and public spaces in the Groningen city centre. The condensed city centre is characterized by its narrow streets and historic architecture, and festival venues are geographically proximate, within walking range, which, as Jonathan Wynn emphasizes in his research on South by Southwest, becomes an important element when a dispersed urban space serves as the festival landscape. The first edition of the festival we know now as Eurosonic Noorderslag began in 1986 as a playful music contest between pop bands from Holland and Belgium, and was aimed to promote Dutch bands, and was named accordingly the Holland-Belgium Festival. Although the festival was successful, it endured criticism from local and regional musicians, as no acts from the northern part of the Netherlands were included in the festival lineup. Musicians felt ignored about the fact that a festival held in a locally acclaimed venue proceeded without including any local bands. As Adam Crims argued in his work on music and urban geography, a shared sense of place through music directly constitutes a sense of shared identity. Musicians from the local music community then felt that their cultural identity was ignored. Early tensions between local cultural identity and larger organizational goals emerged. The festival organization was attentive to the criticism and changed the festival's direction in the next year. In 1987 it was promoted as a competition once again, but this time only Dutch acts appeared on the program. The competition was between acts from the northern part of the Netherlands, the northern provinces of Groningen and Friesland, against bands from the remaining regions. Due to this format, the festival changed its name to Noorderslag, which translates as Battle of the North. After this second edition, the festival organization abandoned the competition element and decided to continue the event as a more generic showcase for Dutch bands, once again obscuring the local music scene. Debates about the representation of local music culture remained an issue as the festival expanded in the late 1980s and early 1990s. These debates reached their peak in 1993. To make a statement, local musicians organized a peripheral counter-festival by the name of Noorderslachting. Noorderslachting being a pun and actually meaning Northern Massacre. It was a platform for bands from Groningen exclusively. It was held on the 8th of January 1993, the day before the official Noorderslag festival was scheduled. The initiative intensified discussions about the role of bands and artists from Groningen and to what extent they should be represented at the official event. Noorderslachting was held for 2 consecutive years until both organizations decided to cooperate and integrate the initiative in the official program in 1995. It was added as an extra festival day and it was renamed Euroslag. Euroslag presented a eclectic mix of local, national and international acts, and it shifted its focus to the European music industry due to the international networks that had been established at the Associated Industry Conference by that time. Since then, the 2 festival elements, Euroslag, which was renamed Eurosonic in 1999, and Noorderslag, have coexisted and each evolved into full-fledged festivals claiming their place within the music industry. Today, Noorderslag focuses exclusively on the Dutch music industry, and Eurosonic is the European showcase festival aimed at the circulation of European acts and repertoires. Ever since the industry conference preceding the festival developed into an international networking event in the mid-1990s, the primary aim of Eurosonic has become to promote the European music industry and provide an answer to the long-standing dominance of the American music industry. The festival has cooperated with European organizations such as the European Broadcasting Union and the European Commission since to launch initiatives that embrace and support this aim. The festival's persistent emphasis on the European music industry raises some interesting questions. How, for example, do artists, visitors and organizers relate to this idea of Europeanness? How is this institutionalized? In other words, how does Eurosonic Noorderslag perform European identity and when is it perceived? One starting point to analyze this is to look at which institutions have emerged within the festival and how they are framed. I will now discuss 2 that exemplify how the festival seems to relate to Europe in 2 contrasting ways. In 2003, Eurosonic Noorderslag initiated the European Talent Exchange Program. in short, ETA in short. This international program facilitates bookings of European acts on festivals outside their home countries. The European festivals that take part in the program commit to booking at least 2 acts from the Eurosonic lineup. And in return, these festivals gain financial support from the sponsor organizations involved. Today, there are over 100 participating festivals on which over 3,000 ETAP shows were presented since the start of the program. On the website, the festival organization accounts for the need to exchange European artists as follows. ETAP was implemented because of the great difficulties that European pop music experiences in international promotion and distribution. Historically, Anglo-American repertoire has been the main focus of professional music distribution and promotion. Despite its great diversity and quality, European music has lagged behind. Now, as this quote reveals, the ETAP program explicitly expresses the need to provide an answer to the Anglo-American dominance as its primary concern. In this conceptualization, Eurosonic Noorderslag is looking at Europe as a market that needs to be protected. It is implied that Europe needs to define itself as separate from the Anglo-American music industry, and if not, European music identity is in danger of losing or neglecting its potential. We might label this idea of Europe a protectionist perspective. The second example of how Eurosonic Noorderslag negotiates European identity is embedded in its award culture. Several awards related to the music industry are presented during Eurosonic Noorderslag, the most influential being the EBBA Award, European Border Breakers Awards, EBBA in short, celebrates European artists who have been successful outside of their home country. The EBBA Award is a prize initiated by the European Commission, who wanted to, quote, highlight the richness and diversity of European music, its creativity and its contribution to innovation. This award show has been presented as part of Eurosonic Noorderslag since 2009 and is broadcast on television throughout Europe. This award is framed explicitly to encourage participants to identify as European and conceptualize their career and artistic relationships as happening within the European community. And the EBBA website states, these music awards aim to highlight Europe's great cultural and linguistic diversity in popular music. The EBBA provide the opportunity for the public to discover emerging European artists and for the music to be spread and enjoyed across Europe. In this case, European identity is not defined by its need to stand up to the Anglo-American hegemony. Rather, the focus has shifted towards a plea to overcome national boundaries and to aim for a supranational cultural voice, much akin to the aim of Europe's music monument, the Eurovision Song Contest. In this perspective, Europe is regarded as an anti-nationalistic entity which needs to redefine itself and reshape its relation to its neighbors. Considering the socio-economic and political challenges Europe faces today, this idea of supranational European identification is a relevant and urgent issue. Within the context of the EBBA Awards, musicians are provided with a platform to affirm their connectedness across national difference. The ETAP program and the EBBA Awards reflect two different versions of Europe. They indicate that both a more protectionist as well as a transcultural attitude towards Europe are at stake at Eurosonic Noorderslag. First, the European music industry is seen as a market that should aim to counter the Anglo-American hegemony, the so-called other, while secondly, Europe is conceptualized as a unifying entity which is fostering international relationships. This more transcultural idea of Europe aims to transcend established national boundaries and aims to find what Monica Sassatelli refers to as unity and diversity. Sassatelli argues that while Europe might have many meanings, it also draws its strength and significance from this ambiguity. In other words, diversity should be considered within a unifying conceptual framework within we can agree to disagree. As the case of Eurosonic Noorderslag exemplifies, cultural identity is negotiated on different levels of analysis. In his research, Jonathan Wynne remarked that, quote, Festivals illuminate some of the key struggles in our modern urban and cultural lives, as they bring some groups together and marginalize others, impose a crafted image of place for locals and visitors, and create unintended opportunities and challenges. End quote. As we have seen, local debates have been pivotal in the development of Eurosonic Noorderslag. And perhaps debates about the representation of place and local music culture were installed by the festival itself in its initial stages. After all, the organization implemented notions of music's relation to geographical location, Holland versus Belgium and then later the Battle of the North, into the festivities as a competition parameter. Visitors and participants have had an ambivalent relationship to Eurosonic Noorderslag ever since, which dispersed when it shifted its focus to Europe. Today, the European-focused institutions that are essential elements of the festival, the ETAP program and the EBBA Award Show, relate to European cultural identity in both a protectionist and a more transcultural way. The European music industry needs to provide a counterweight to the Anglo-American dominance, but should also stimulate European unity. Of course, Europe is a complex amalgam of languages, conventions, boundaries and locations, but also harbors great cultural potential. Now approaching its 33rd edition, Eurosonic Noorderslag has evolved into a Dutch and European showcase festival, an award show and an international networking platform all condensed into a single event. It is a space where local and global cultures meet, identities form and new artistic networks are established. Ultimately, Eurosonic Noorderslag offers a contemporary platform to investigate this role of festivals in communicating cultural identity. Thank you.
Very nicely timed. 18
Yes.
minutes, not bad.
Sorry?
18 minutes.
18, okay.
Yeah, so that was good. Any questions? I've got questions. Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. I've got a few questions, but I guess the main ones are, do you know what genre is basically mainly showcased in this?
What genre?
Yeah, what
It's,
genre?
yeah, it's rock, pop rock oriented.
Okay.
It's some indie.
Indie, okay,
Yeah,
great.
indie rock.
And what's the main language of the bands showcased? Is it Dutch or English?
I would say the main language is in English, and that's also a tension within the festival, because they're trying to convey some. Actually, organizers try to convey the festival as a European event, and trying to promote a sort of local authenticity of a sort of Europeanness, but they all sing in English, and they sort of mirror a lot of bands mirror themselves to their American counterparts. So.
What do Dutch bands, generally speaking, sing in English? All the
In general?
Yeah.
Well, in general, most Dutch bands sing in English.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what happens at the festival as well.
We finished your
question? Last question. And how is this supposed to counteract the supposed Anglo-American dominance when the language they sing is actually English?
Yeah.
Also, together with this, you say Anglo-American, but actually the UK is part of, supposedly part of Europe. So, I don't know, like this European stance to counteract Anglo-American sounds a bit like a contradiction as well.
Yes, it is, and I agree with that, because the bands that in the ETAP program has become the most successful are British bands. Dua Lipa, she's British, right? Yeah. And Franz Ferdinand, and a lot of bands who used this platform as a stepping stone, which is actually the second part of my research, to investigate how the festival as a showcase event serves as a stepping stone. But that's another story. But that is a tension, because they're singing in English, and I think it has to do with continental Europe and how where the music is circulating. If there is a European radio station, that continental countries know what is happening musically in their neighboring countries, which is basically non-existent.
I think you have a
slightly related question, but one thing I'm interested in is who's choosing and curating, for instance, the awards, because generally when big broadcasters are involved, they tend to be quite conservative. So more mainstream artists. And how does the mainstream work with the margins in something like Eurosonic?
Well, the awards are curated. There is a commission, and there are representatives from the festival, and it's not just curated actually, but it's also actually I think I'm not saying it correct. The awards are awarded to artists who have become successful outside of their home countries with their debut album. So they're basically.
So that's a criteria.
That's a criteria, yes. Yeah. So album sales and also airplay.
Yeah. So it tends to be the more popular mainstream artists.
Yeah, by definition. Yeah. In the ABBA Awards.
They're breakthrough artists.
Yeah. And the ETAP, the other program, is curated, and that's debatable. Yeah.
I think you. No, hold on, I'm not doing this very well. Was it you or was it you?
I think you were first.
Well, I'm just curious to try and understand how the notion of Anglo-American dominance is being understood here.
Mm-hmm.
And are we looking at it from an industry angle here, or from the music itself, or from the notion of a notion, a European culture, or a continental European culture? I'm not quite sure whose voice is putting this forward.
Right. The festival, the festival organizers and the representatives, they see it's basically from the industry perspective. They say all the music is generated in America. We're basically sort of overpowered by the British, but mainly the American music industry. And I think the organizers have that vision, and they say, well, we should focus more on Europe and see what we can circulate, that the European music can circulate more in continental Europe. And production-wise, they have export offices all around Europe.
I mean, I'm seeing that in a historical perspective, but I mean, when we're looking in the age of the global music industry, where basically we have 3 global corporations controlling, I'm struggling quite to understand.
But still, if you don't mind me interjecting, the British media and music industry, let's not get into the whys or wherefores or good or bad of it, do look down on music from Europe. It's absolutely true. It's not very often that a European band breaks through in the British market. So even though there's levels where there's all sorts of links and touring and distribution, even played against Sam, the biggest distributor in Britain, as well as Europe of alternative music, but artistically we don't think they're as good. It is. So I see it from that point of view.
Yeah, well, that's the driving argument from the organizers as well. Yeah.
Can I move on to
yours?
Thanks, Rob. Really interesting. It's fascinating to be studying something called the European Border Breakers Awards at an exact time when European borders are sort of being fortified as they are. And I was thinking then there seems to be a vagueness in the definition of Europe in these projects, but also a vagueness in the definition of borders. And if I understand it correctly, if the people who are nominated for these awards are just the very successful artists who seemingly not having much difficulty with their careers anyway, then who are these border breaking awards actually helping? And is it creating this tiered system where a border is actually more like a filter where elites and capital can flow across them and everyone else gets stopped by them?
Right.
And if these kinds of borders are actually doing that political work here as well in this festival.
Yeah, I think who they are helping is the European, because it's an institution and it's broadcast throughout Europe, so it helps circulate the European artists who win an award.
Is there then no limit to the diversity that's being celebrated? Because you've got a picture of the winners and it seems very white.
Okay. I'm not aware of any. There's no racial issues as far as I know.
But didn't you say that anyway, when you said about the genre, didn't you say it was sort of rock pop indie, so it's going to be white?
Yeah. Oh.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Predominantly.
It's predominantly white, but it's and it's also, and that's my criticism as well. They have a focus country each year as well, and it's mostly from the western part of Europe. Eastern Europe is neglected for a major part, as if Eastern Europe is not part of Europe. So that's But those are things I have to consider.
Can I ask a question? Well, it's a sort of two questions really. One is, so there's the European thing and then there's the Dutch thing. Do you get the same number of attendees? And also, if you were to be dropped in the middle of the European one or the Dutch one, would you know?
Yes, because the Dutch one is held in a.
It's inside.
It's a different. Yeah, it's inside.
Yeah,
It's
but from the music I meant.
From the.
What would you be able to tell from the music whether you're at the Dutch one or is the musical content?
Right. Well, the Dutch one reflects what's happening in the Dutch music industry, and that's not necessarily Anglo-American, so to speak, and it's not necessarily Dutch, but there are more Dutch bands over there who sing in Dutch, and the Dutch hip-hop is very popular at the moment, and so they are programmed there. But would you know musically? Maybe not.
So what I'm saying really, is there a Dutch style?
Right. Yeah, that's hard to other than the language, I wouldn't say. Although I've heard that one Dutch band, if I can remember correctly, was becoming popular a few years back in Britain, and they said immediately, okay, that's the Dutch sound. The piling sound is that's what they call it. Was it the Cats, maybe? I'm not sure.
And a companion thing would be, is there a Dutch sound, is there a European sound?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I am critical as well about that idea, that notion. I mean, of course, it's the European, to break the borders, so to speak, is a noble endeavor, but I think it's hard to tell if there's a European identity. I mean, maybe the idea that there is an identity encapsulated in institutions and in cooperation is maybe enough to work with. But,
The University of Huddersfield, inspiring tomorrow's professionals.